Ah, there we go. Finally got there in the end. So sorry about that. All that time I was talking. Right. Let me just sort out the audio. Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to my Christmas storytelling stream. Whoops. Better turn this down. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Hinsdale New Hamster, Ichiro Zuri, Tango the Cat, and Ospiro. Thank you all for coming, and I thank you all for the patience while I was trying to sort out the audio. I don't know what happened there. And I'd also like to give special thanks to Ichiro Zuri for making these new PNG drawings from me. One for my story telling, and this one for when I do game streaming. But we're doing storytelling today. So I'm going to read out a first Christmas story, and it's called The Fir Tree. Okay, I hope you all are ready. Hi Kimberly Cab, thank you for coming. The Fir Tree, a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, out in the woods stood a nice little fir tree. The place he had was a very good one. The sun shone on him as to fresh air, there was enough of that, and round him grew many large-sized comrades, pines as well as firs. But the little fir wanted so very much to be a grown-up tree. He did not think of the warm sun and of the fresh air. He did not care for the little cottage children that ran about and prattled when they were in the woods looking for wild strawberries. The children often came with a whole pitcher full of berries, or a long row of them threaded on a straw, and sat down near the young tree and said, "Oh, how pretty he is! What a nice little fir!" But this was what the tree could not bear to hear. At the end of a year he had shot up a good deal, and after another year he was another long bit taller, for with fir trees one can always tell by the shoots how many years old they are. "Oh, were I but such a high tree as the others are," sighed he. "Then I should be able to spread out my branches, and with the tops to look into the wide world. Then would the birds build nests among my branches, and when there was a breeze I could bend with as much stateliness as the others. Neither the sunbeams, nor the birds, nor the red clouds which morning and evening sailed above him, gave the little tree any pleasure. In winter, when the snow lay glittering on the ground, a hare would often come leaping along and jump right over the little tree. Oh, that made him so angry. But 2 winters were past, and in the third the tree was so large that the hare was obliged to go round it. To grow and grow, to get older and be tall, thought the tree, that after all is the most delightful thing in the world. In autumn, the woodcutters always came and felled some of the largest trees. This happened every year, and the young fir tree, that had now grown to a very comely size, trembled at the sight, for the magnificent great trees fell to the earth with noise and crackling. The branches were lopped off, and the trees looked long and bare. They were hardly to be recognised. And then they were laid in carts, and the horses dragged them out of the wood. Where did they go to? What became of them? I'll just stop there and now have a chance to read my latest comments in the chat. Hi there, Jopla. Thank you very much for coming. So much appreciated. Thank you, Aspiro. Yeah, thank Ichiro Zuri for doing this drawing for me. He's a really cool and friendly guy as well. I really appreciate that, Jopla. Thank you. In spring, when the swallows and the storks came, the tree asked them, "Don't you know where they have been taken? Have you not met them anywhere?" The swallows did not know anything about it, but the stork looked musing, nodded his head and said, "Yes, I think I know. I met many ships as I was flying hither from Egypt. On the ships were magnificent masts, and I ventured to assert that it was they that smelt so of fur. I may congratulate you, for they lifted themselves on high most majestically. Oh, were I but old enough to fly across the sea! But how does the sea look in reality? What is it like?" "That would take a long time to explain," said the stork, and with these words off he went. "Rejoice in thy growth," said the sunbeams. "Rejoice in thy vigorous growth, and in the fresh life that moveth within thee." And the wind kissed the tree, and the dew wept tears over him, but the fir understood it not. When Christmas came, quite young trees were cut down, trees which often were not even as large or of the same age as this fir tree, who could never rest, but always wanted to be off. These young trees, and they were always the finest looking, retained their branches. They were laid on carts, and the horses drew them out of the wood. "Where are they going to?" asked the fir. "They are not taller than I." There was one indeed that was considerably shorter, and why do they retain all their branches? Whither are they taken? We know, chirped the sparrows. "We have peeped in at the windows in the town below. We know whither they are taken. The greatest splendour and the greatest magnificence one can imagine await them. We peeped through the windows, and saw them planted in the middle of the warm room, and ornamented with the most splendid things, with gilded apples, with gingerbread, with toys, and many hundred lights." "And then?" asked the fir tree, trembling in every bough. "And then? What happens then?" "We did not see anything more. It was incomparably beautiful." "I would fain know if I am destined for so glorious a career," cried the tree, rejoicing. "That is still better than to cross the sea. What a longing do I suffer! Were Christmas but come! I am now tall, and my branches spread like the others that were carried off last year. Oh, were I but already on the cart! Were I in the warm room with all the splendour and magnificence! Yes, then something better, something still grander, will surely follow. Or wherefore should they thus ornament me? Something better, something still grander must follow. But what? Oh, how I long, how I suffer. I do not know myself what is the matter with me. Rejoice in our presence, said the air and the sunlight. Rejoice in thy own fresh youth. But the tree did not rejoice at all. He grew and was green both winter and summer. People that saw him said, "What a fine tree!" And towards Christmas he was one of the first that was cut down. The axe struck deep into the very pith. The tree fell to the earth with a sigh. He felt a pang. It was like a swoon. He could not think of happiness, for he was sorrowful at being separated from his home, from the place where he had sprung up. He well knew that he should never see his dear old comrades, the little bushes and flowers around him, any more, perhaps not even the birds. The departure was not at all agreeable. Oh, hi, dear hole. Thank you for coming. The tree only came to himself when he was unloaded in a courtyard with the other trees and heard a man say, "That one is splendid. We don't want the others." Then two servants came in rich livery and carried the fir tree into a large and splendid drawing room. Or livery, I might have mispronounced that, but moving on. Portraits were hanging on the walls, and near the white porcelain stove stood two large Chinese vases with lions on the covers. There too were large easy chairs, silken sofas, large tables full of picture books and full of toys, worth hundreds and hundreds of crowns. At least the children said so. And the fir tree was stuck upright in a cask that was filled with sand, but no one could see that it was a cask, for green cloth was hung all round it, and it stood on a large gaily coloured carpet. Oh, how the tree quivered! What was to happen? The servants, as well as the young ladies, decorated it. On one branch there hung little nets cut out of coloured paper, and each net was filled with sugar plums, and among the other boughs gilded apples and walnuts were suspended, looking as though they had grown there, and little blue and white tapers were placed among the leaves. Dolls that looked for all the world like men. The tree had never beheld such before, was seen among the foliage, and at the very top a large star of gold tinsel was fixed. It was really splendid, beyond description splendid. This evening, they all said, how it will shine this evening. Oh, thought the tree, if the evening were but come, if the tapers were but lighted. And then I wonder what will happen. Perhaps the other trees from the forest will come to look at me. Perhaps the sparrows will beat against the window panes. I wonder if I shall take root here, and winter and summer stand covered with ornaments. He knew very much about the matter, but he was so impatient that for sheer longing he got a pain in his back, and this with trees is the same thing as a headache with us. The candles were now lighted. What brightness! What splendour! The tree trembled so in every bough that one of the tapers set fire to the foliage. It blazed up famously. "Help! Help!" cried the young ladies, and they quickly put out the fire. Now the tree did not even dare tremble. What a state he was in! He was so uneasy lest he should lose something of his splendour, that he was quite bewildered amidst the glare and brightness. when suddenly both folding doors opened. A troop of children rushed in as if they would upset the tree. The older persons followed quietly. The little ones stood quite still, but it was only for a moment. Then they shouted that the whole place re-echoed with their rejoicing. They danced around the tree, and one present after the other was pulled off. "What are they about?" thought the tree. "What is to happen now?" And the lights burned down to the very branches, and as they burned down they were put out one after the other, and then the children had permission to plunder the tree. So they fell upon it with such violence that all its branches cracked. If it had not been fixed firmly in the ground, it would certainly have tumbled down. The children danced about with their beautiful playthings. No one looked at the tree except the old nurse, who peeped between the branches, but it was only to see if there was a fig or an apple left that had been forgotten. "A story! A story!" cried the children, drawing a little fat man towards the tree. He seated himself under it and said, "Now we are in the shade, and the tree can listen too. But I shall tell only one story. Now which will you have? That old Ivedy Avedy, or that Humpy Dumpy who tumbled downstairs, and yet after all came to the throne and married the princess?" The end. I'm going to select a different kind of Christmas music because I've realised that some of them are songs that have been repeated. No copyright. Just one moment. This one seems nice with the crackling fireplace. Now, is this too loud or too quiet or just right? Hi, Walter, Texas. Excuse me. Too quiet. Okay. Just testing. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think I'll go and read The Elves and the Shoemaker. Depends. Not a long story. I'll go to a different one. Okay, this one's very different. Once there was a reindeer... Oh, I'll start with the title first. Very important. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Once there was a reindeer named Rudolph who lived at the North Pole in Toyland. Rudolph was younger and smaller than the other reindeer there. They all had proud, tall antlers. Rudolph's antlers were only tiny stubs. Worst of all, Rudolph had a big, bright red nose. It was so red it glowed in the dark. Poor Rudolph. He wanted to be like the other reindeer in Toyland. Oh, to have a small brown nose instead of a big, bright red one. The other reindeer made fun of Rudolph and called him names. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, they teased over and over again until tears glistened on Rudolph's large red nose. Sometimes the other reindeers circled around Rudolph, kicking up snowballs with their tiny hoofs and covering Rudolph with a blanket of white fluffy snow. All the reindeer loved to play games. They played tree tag and snow slide and tumble bones. But Rudolph was never asked to play. He stood behind a pine tree and watched. He was very lonely. Rudolph couldn't even play hide and seek with the rabbits. His glowing red nose gave him away every time. Before Christmas Eve, Santa's elves posted a sign on the gate to Toyland. Santa's team choosing time, the sign said. All the reindeer were asked to line up at 8 o'clock in the meadow. Santa Claus was coming to choose the team that would help deliver presents to every good little boy and girl in the world. The reindeer fairly danced with excitement when they heard the news. They pranced and tossed their antlers and pawed the snowy ground with their hoofs. Each reindeer hoped he would be chosen to guide Santa's sleigh. It was the greatest honor a reindeer could ever have. Rudolph sighed. He was ashamed to have Santa see his bright red nose, so he decided to hide. At 8 o'clock, when all the other reindeer had gone to the meadow, Rudolph hid behind a holly hedge. His bright red nose blended in with the bright red berries, and the thick growth of leaves concealed the rest of him. No one would find him there. Down in the meadow, all the hopeful reindeers stood in a line waiting to be inspected by Santa himself. Santa had to choose carefully. Only the fastest, the strongest, and the best reindeer would do.
I think Dasher will be fine. He's the biggest reindeer, said Santa.
Dasher, wrote his elf assistant in a big book.
And Dancer is the strongest,
said Santa, pulling his beard. Dancer, wrote the elf.
Ho ho, let's see,
continued Santa.
Here's Prancer and here's Vixen. They make the smoothest landings on rooftops. Comet is the fastest, and Cupid is the most sure-footed, said Santa. I pick them. And last I choose Donder and Blitzen. They're best at twisting over treetops and skimming over telephone poles.
The reindeer in Santa's team were very happy. They rubbed noses. They danced and clinked their antlers together. Even the reindeer who weren't chosen were given good jobs. One was to try out electric trains. Another was to cuddle Christmas kittens. The only reindeer without a job was Rudolph. He wanted to help, but he knew he would be laughed at, so he stayed hidden behind the holly hedge. At last it was Christmas Eve. Santa's elves were busy packing the sleigh. In fact, everyone was busy except Rudolph. Finally, he could stand it no longer. I don't care if they do make fun of me. I want to help too. He dashed from his hiding place behind the hedge and went to find Santa. There must be something I can do to help. The night was bitter cold and a terrible fog covered all the earth. Santa's elves kept bumping into each other as they hitched up the team. They could hardly see as they put on each bright red harnesses and tied each jingle bell. To make matters worse, Dasher and Dancer were fighting over who was to be lead reindeer. I was chosen first, said Dasher, stamping angrily. But you always trip over the moon, said Dancer. Santa was worried.
We'll never get there if you two don't stop quarrelling. And where is my Christmas list? Dash it all, I can't see a thing in this fog.
Just then, a soft red glow lit up the snow.
Thank goodness, said Santa. I found my list. Ho, ho, I must have tucked it in my belt. Who brought this fine lantern? Asked Santa. I must take it with me. Why, I can see perfectly now.
It's not a lantern, said Rudolph, trembling. The light comes from my nose.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, said Santa. I'm certainly glad to see you. Your light will guide my sleigh tonight. I appoint you head of my team and #1 reindeer in all the world.
Rudolph was very proud. Now he realized how special he was, and he would never again feel ashamed of his glowing nose. Rudolph held his head high. Proudly he pranced to the front of the team. All the other reindeer bowed. Donder and Dancer helped Rudolph put on his harness, and Cupid gave him a beautiful sprig of holly berries. Then down, down through the clouds, and over the sleeping houses, Santa and his team flew on that foggy Christmas Eve, and leading the whole procession was Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. So if you see a soft glow in the sky on Christmas Eve, you can be sure that Rudolph, the most famous reindeer of all, is very near. The end. Hi there, Ismail Ali. Thank you for joining. And I'm really glad you like my Santa voice, Spyro. I was a little bit unsure. I think just where I get quite nervous. Okay. Ooh. Didn't realise this. Just makes you go past the pages. Thank you. Thank you, Ismail. I'll have a look at Polar Express. Ooh. Rotate it. That's better. Okay, I can do this one as well. The Polar Express, written and illustrated by Chris van Allsburg. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. Oh yeah, I wouldn't miss doing another Christmas story at all, Walter, Texas. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I was listening for a sound that a friend had told me I'd never hear. The ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. There is no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. Oh, take care, Kimberly. Thank you for coming. And there's the boy looking out the window. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe. I tiptoed downstairs and out the door. All aboard! The conductor cried out. I ran up to him. Well, he said, are you coming? Where? I asked. Why, to the North Pole, of course, was his answer. This is the Polar Express. I took his outstretched hand and he pulled me aboard. Really beautiful pictures. The train was filled with other children, all in their pyjamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centres as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon there were no more lights to be seen. We travelled through cold, dark forests where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. Oh, they are beautiful. Really breathtaking. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on the frozen sea. There, said the conductor, is the North Pole. The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first we saw no elves. They are gathering at the centre of the city, the conductor told us. That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas. Who receives the first gift? We all asked. The conductor answered, He will choose one of you. Hi, Boba. I'm happy that you came to my stream. Thank you. Didn't know hedgehogs can read. Ah, you thought wrong. Look, shouted one of the children. The elves! Outside we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the centre of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no farther, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us and pointed to me, said,
Let's have this fellow here.
He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee and he asked,
Now, what would you like for Christmas?
I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from the reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him and called out,
The first gift of Christmas.
Well. A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared in the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. Let's hurry outside and look for it, one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. What? I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth. Merry Christmas, he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. Yeah, this is the Polar Express. Water. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note. Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket, signed Mr. C. I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard, but my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. The end. That was a very interesting story. Just 1 moment, I'm gonna have my cup of tea. Hello, I'm back for a few minutes. Then I'll have my dinner, but I'm not going to end the stream. I enjoyed my cup of tea. Hello, Darth Rivan. How have you been? It's been a while since I've last heard from you. Hope you've been doing well. So happy you've joined. Thank you. No, long cup of joe. If only I could drink coffee. Hate coffee. I like the smell of it, but not the taste. It's weird. Tired but good, thanks. How are you? I'm doing all right, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing really well. I'll pick a quick story. Just while my dinner is nearly ready. Let's see. I'll do 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement C. Moore. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
Oh Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen.
To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. as dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky. So up the house top the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof, as I drew in my head and was turning around, and down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowlful of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old self, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight,
Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
The end. Yeah, it's a great classic. Hi, Betty Bam Bam. Thank you for joining. Boba. And thank you for telling everyone to leave a like on my stream, Darth Rivan. Much appreciated. I will be right back again. This time I'm going to have my dinner. I shan't be too long. I'm still here. Just let you know that I'll be finishing my dinner as soon as I can. Won't be long. Alright, I'm back. Select different video now because just the same songs being played over and over again. Hmm. Just having a look at different videos. Hi, Odd Hammond. Thank you for coming. I'm doing well, thank you. How about you? Don't know what's happening here. Okay. I'll find another storybook to read. That's good. Happy to know that. Just looking for a good, for another story to read. I'm just going to have a quick look at it, what this one is and how long the story is. Going a bit slow. Oh no, I don't want that. Don't want that. Not fascinated with that. With those choices. I'll have a quick look at a visit from St. Nicholas. Oh, that's basically what I've read earlier on. 'Twas the night before Christmas. I could do How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Ah. Bit slow for some reason. Right, okay. Alrighty. The original Dr. Seuss story of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I love watching the actual animated film of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, animated by Chuck Jones. How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. I'll have to zoom for it. I'll have to do it like this. There we go. That seems better. Go away, ads. Okay. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas. The whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm-lighted widows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew. All the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush to their toys, and then, oh the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? No problem, Walter. Oh, very, very cool, Wild Hammond. Hope it'll go well. Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. But since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said. If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on the ramshackle sleigh and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Get up!" and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. "This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, and the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash, while that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I will stuff up the tree." And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by his tiny Who daughter, the Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child, then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's, he was grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, and then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. It was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puddler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day, and the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself and the Grinch carved the roast beast. The end. Okay then, I think I'll make that it for tonight's live stream, Christmas storytelling. Hopefully I'll do some more later of this week. Don't know if any of you want me to continue with reading Christmas stories on YouTube or on Twitch, because I am confused between which one I should go to. I know it's strange, but I just wanted to make sure everybody's comfortable. You're very welcome. I thank you all for coming. But yeah, and like I'm happy you enjoyed it, and thank you very much. Thank you. I hope to see you all again very soon. Okay, I'll stick with YouTube. Oh, that's alright. Hopefully you can just play back this video. Alrighty. I will continue with reading more storytelling, Christmas storytelling later of this week, and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Yeah, and then I'll see you again very soon.